Hello, today I'm going to make a video on the current areas of my body that are kind of hurting and what I'm doing to address them slash what I think the issue is. So right now there are three main areas, one being my left ankle, other one being my right shoulder slash like pec insert, and then the third one being my left hip. We'll start with the left hip. That's been an issue for a while. As a theme on this channel, I've talked about femoral acetabular impingement, FAI. I was diagnosed with that like a couple years ago and had symptoms for probably like year and a half before. Major, like significant symptoms that I noticed kind of semi-regularly. But what I've done with that, the basic theme in addressing that was addressing huge mobility issues. My kind of running theory on FAI is that if you're somebody that has those bone shapes, it's not that you're destined to, have labral damage and then eventually develop arthritis, which is kind of the narrative surrounding the condition. Rather, my belief is that it just leaves you more likely to run into problems later on if you have very tight hips that are pulled in one direction, to where one direction meaning like your hip capsule is like pulled forward so that you're more likely to impinge on that front and internal part of your hip where you generally have FAI type pain. So given I have those bone shapes, addressing my mobility was a huge deal, namely in my gracilis, which I don't even know if you can see what I'm talking about, but it would basically be like this muscle here, my gracilis, and then like my outer hip, that opening that up, as well as trying to get my glute to really like activate and make sure that it was like pulling my hip capsule back, was very helpful, as long as doing movement like the ATG split squat and really trying to think about, again, pulling with my glute when I push up, rather than just being so focused on like pushing through my quad when I would do leg movements. That requires more nuance to explain, but that's kind of the short version on what I have done and have been doing with that. Within my training, it basically looks like I do like a kind of extreme type pigeon stretch on a bench, and then I also do a gracilis stretch, and then I'll do a band warm up for my like glute medius, kind of like a monster walk, as well as do some stuff with that same band, and I'll do some like hip flexor warm up, really trying to like squeeze through my hip flexor and push the other leg, and then vice versa. And that helps quite a lot and makes it so that I have very minimal pain or hip pain or irritation moving forward from there during my workout and after, which I mean is the important part. I think the next frontier for me to explore is how I can actually address the fact that I have like extremely limited internal rotation on both hips, which is largely due to my anatomy, but particularly my left hip. It's almost like non-existent. I can get to a point where I can kind of work into some ranges, like dynamically, like moving my leg up and down with it being a little internally rotated. But in terms of like the actual, amount my hip can, okay, well, I'm not doing a great analogy, but like the amount it can actually internally rotate is very minimal. And it just feels like there's kind of like a hard stop to where I'm interested if I was able to push that without causing pain, because that's generally the issue, is that if I try and do internal rotation type work, it just hurts, to where I feel like it's almost better to just completely avoid that range. But I'm curious if there would be a way that I could open that up, and if that would maybe be the next step towards my hips being healthier, feeling even better. But at the very least, I have a working way to address things, and it's been going well for the most part. So no surgery on the horizon there. Other thing, for probably about 2.5 years, I've had a left ankle that's just kind of felt off. I remember it first starting being an issue the same fall that my left hip started really becoming an issue. I wonder if those two things are connected. But I think it was just kind of like a sprain / Achilles strain that turned into just something I didn't really pay attention to, because when you're a collegiate athlete, at least for me, I was trying to earn a spot the majority of my career. I wasn't just in that spot where I felt comfortable enough to take time off. So it was something that, I just kept working through, and really wasn't too much of an issue until like this past spring, where again, I just think, there wasn't really much rest because I was at this point actually a starter on the team. And it was something where I just kept pushing through, and it's also something where it's like, if I go out running, eventually it'll stop hurting. But like every day I wake up, my Achilles and my left ankle is just super tight. And it just, if you just hurt that, it literally just pops constantly. I don't know if I have some like posterior type impingement, or if it's just simply a sprain that I just ignored and has, ligaments have maybe healed in some way that prevent it from moving optimally. But basically, I have very limited, we'll pretend this is my ankle. I have very limited this and that. I know one of them's dorsiflexion, but I don't want to say which, sound like an idiot. But nevertheless, it's very limited in my range of motion this way, both ways. So I'm doing like basically just stretching my Achilles / calves every workout. And then I'm also doing something where I'll like leave my foot off the end of a bench and put a kettlebell on it and just allow it to like stretch and kind of like, help my foot be able to flatten out. So my hope is that opening up those ranges will lead to less pain. I would say it has improved somewhat. Namely, I think the Achilles stretching has been helpful. But I'm curious if also continuing to strengthen the tibialis will help. And kind of where the next frontier in that thing, or that addressing that issue, will be. But yeah, I'll keep you updated on that one. Last one was actually yesterday. I've been pushing my bench press quite a bit, and the past few weeks I've noticed like my right pec, like right in here, that like kind of like, again, I'll call it my pec insertion or something. It just felt tight to where like when I'm bench pressing, I'll just notice like this side, it'll be this achy soreness, and not even the whole pec, but just right in here. Yesterday, I noticed it felt particularly tight, and also I even felt the pain kind of radiate into my bicep. Now, I'm somebody where the first step in addressing injuries, and it's going to sound really dumb, but it's generally to ignore it. And the reason that is because it's a human body, it's a working machine. You're going to have aches and pains. No need to freak out. But ignoring it essentially is a way for like, all right, we'll see if the body just adapts naturally to my training, right? Because it's normal, like if you do, for me, like I haven't benched, twice a week at a really high intensity with a good amount of volume for a long time, to where my body wasn't adapted to that style of training and amount of volume. So, my thought was maybe this is just, a bump to go through so that my body can bench more efficiently and effectively at a higher level. Anyways, what happened yesterday is I just noticed a new sensation, and that was basically just some pretty normal rotor cuff pain, which is common, and where I noticed it was after I did a set of 6, a set of 5, another set of 5, a set of 4 on bench press with 325. And again, I've been pushing the weight every single workout, trying to get back to that like all-time level of strength, which is like a 380, 385 bench press, because I'm trying to hit 4 plates. I noticed on my set of 6, the first set, the 6th rep was actually like one of the most disgusting reps of bench press I've done in years, maybe. And it was one of those where I just like threw it down and then like probably, impacted my chest way lower or higher than I normally do. I think it was lower, and then I like launched it off and did the thing where it was all like uneven and terrible, and that happens. It shouldn't happen too often, but that didn't cause any pain. But during that next set, I noticed on like reps maybe 3, 4, or 5, just again some of that just sensation of like impingement, internal, like too much internal rotation on the right shoulder. And it's also maybe come to realize that when I'm bench pressing, I think this left shoulder is back and down, and this other one likes to come out for whatever reason. So I think I'm benching like this, which would make sense as to why I might feel some, you know, unique sensation here. Well, this thing, you know, this whole area is doing great. God willing, it stays that way. But this one, you know, now that I've continued to push and you know, everything's probably more fatigued and everything, that I've been running into some minor roadblocks here. But plan to remedy that is going to be extra conscious of my form. Is going to be extra conscious of my form, namely that both shoulders are back and down, you know, packed in and supported. Other than that, I also intend to do a fair amount of like stability work, not like a ton. You know, we're not nuclear here. This isn't nuclear option, whatever. Like, I don't know why I mentioned that, but it's not a huge deal. It's just a bump in the road. And in doing that, I'll probably do some like IYT stability type work, be extra conscious of my form, as I previously mentioned, as well as do a movement. I call them Suliks because I've seen Sam Sulek do them. And I just think it's a good way to encapsulate it rather than saying like a face pull external rotation variation, which is what it is. I'll just call it Suliks. And it's basically where, you know, a face pull, you're going to be like this, right? This is basically just doing like a one arm variation and really just emphasizing like pulling back and then externally rotating. So, it's more external rotation heavy than face pulls. Because I see face pulls, some people just do them with minimal external rotation, but doing that variation in the past has addressed some of my issues with that kind of impingement type sensation, which I also ran into when I was really heavily incline benching and pursuing a 315 incline bench, like the fall of 22. So that's a synopsis for now. You know, I think if you're training hard and you're not, you know, 17 anymore, it's normal to run into aches and pains. But I think what really matters is that you're able to continue to train without them getting worse and slowly address them over time. And in doing this, you know, it grants you this perspective where you look at aches and pains, and it's like, it's not really that you're hurting your body as much as your training is exposing ways your body is, you're either training correctly or you're weak. So the solution to that is to train better, probably be more conscious of your form, like with the bench press, and 2, fix areas of weakness. So that's kind of my view on all that stuff. I hope this was insightful. If you have any questions or thoughts or want to call me an idiot, make sure you do that below and like the video. Have a great day.